Okay, the meeting of the Board of Voter Registration and Elections of Beaufort County is called to order. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comments, and I see that there are no public present today, so we'll move on. Minutes from the meeting on February 26, 2025. That was a regularly scheduled board meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Aline Mitchell, so moved that the minutes for February 26, 2025 board meeting be accepted.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, our meeting minutes from the March 10th, 2025 special board meeting. Do I have a motion to accept these minutes?
I move that we accept the minutes from the March 10th special meeting of the
Aline
board.
second.
Any comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, and next on the agenda is committee reports. So we'll start with budget and finance. Mr. Backer.
We did not meet during the past month, so there's nothing to report on from a meeting, but we did develop a kind of a reporting template going forward that we could use for reporting financial performance and variances versus budget. And we've had discussions with Ms. Smalls and Mr. Roberson. Looks like that would be acceptable, and we will use that form at the next Finance Committee meeting, which we plan to hold in early April to cover the past quarter and the 9 months year-to-date.
Okay. Any questions? No questions for Mr. Backer. Okay, thank you. Mr. Ford, facilities.
The Facilities Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at Election Central, and we'll report afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Legislative Affairs, that's my committee. I have no update on this. However, to the members of the Legislative Affairs Committee, I will be scheduling a meeting. We can do it virtually to talk about a resolution regarding S36, which I believe was distributed to all members previously. That's a bill that increases precinct sizes from 1,500 to 3,000, and also gives the full authority to the Board of Elections to co-locate precincts on election day for polling purposes. So please watch for a meeting invitation for that. Okay, redistricting, Ms. Dorr.
The re-precincting committee met on March 3rd, 2025 at 2:30 at the Beaufort County Voter Registration and Elections Office. Present at this meeting were the following: Herbert Ford, member; Aline Mitchell, member; Jim Backer, member; Marie Smalls, director; and Beverly Dorr, yours truly, chair. The committee discussed the agenda that you will see attached after adoption by the re-precincting committee. We reviewed and made recommendations for modifying the charter, and a description of responsibilities were also reviewed, and a consensus was reached on the changes and will be forwarded to the Rules Committee. The committee reviewed, discussed pertinent legislation, and analyzed current voter totals as of 3/9/25. A discussion of the requirements of 77710 were reviewed and analyzed, and pursuant to Section 77710, SEC is required in January to notify the General Assembly of precincts greater than 1,500 voters. This law further stipulates that if the General Assembly fails to act by April 1st, the SEC will notify counties of the requirement to conform to the aforementioned provisions. As of the date of our committee meeting, no notification had been received by the board. Therefore, the re-precincting committee's recommendation to the Board of Voter Registration and Elections of Beaufort County is as follows. If the Beaufort County Board of Voter Registration and Elections does not receive notification from the State Election Commission by April 1st, 2025 regarding precincts that are not in compliance with 77710, the Beaufort County Board of Voter Registration and Elections will officially recommend to the legislative delegation to split the following 8 precincts. New River, which has 2,677 voters. Bluffton 2C, which currently has 1,865 voters. Bluffton 7A, which has 1,860 voters. Moss Creek, which has 1,697 voters. Ladies Island 2B, which has 1,623 voters. Bluffton 4A, which has 1,642 voters. Riverbend, which has 1,594 voters. And St. Helena 1C, which has 1,581 voters. Respectfully submitted, Beverly Dorr, Chairperson.
Thank you for that very complete and detailed report.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Dorr, do I understand that there may be a motion for the board to approve a request to the legislative delegation to split these 8 listed precincts?
Right, if we don't receive notification by April 1st.
Okay, may I ask a question about that? Is there any limitation in the Code of Laws that stops us from making a request prior to April 1st?
I'm just following the letter of the law.
I see. Okay.
That date was given.
Do I have a motion to, for the Board of Voter Registration and Elections, to, if the Board of Voter Registration and Elections does not receive notification from the State Election Commission by April 1st, 2025 regarding precincts that are not in compliance with 7710, the Board of Elections will recommend to the legislative delegation to split the following 8 precincts, and it's the precincts listed here.
Yes, and these are the current voter totals, which are just a little bit different from the ones that you and I received for the committee.
Okay.
I have just a question
Wait,
related.
So, I asked if there was a motion. Did you say there is a motion?
This is the recommendation from our committee. Someone from this board needs to adopt our report and make a motion.
Well, I'll move to adopt the report. Does anyone want to second it?
And to make the
Well,
recommendation.
first, let's adopt the report.
Yes, yes.
I will second the recommendation to adopt the report.
Okay, any discussion about adopting the report?
Well, I have a question, but I'm not sure, it's not related to adopting the report. It's a question related to an item in the statute.
Why don't we finish the discussion of adopting the report and vote on that, and then we can have further discussion. And we do need to discuss the motion, the proposed motion. So, all in favor of adopting the report, say aye. Aye. Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Yes,
Cooper.
sir. In the report, it says SEC is required, in the middle of the page, paragraph 3, SEC is required in January to notify the General Assembly of the precincts greater than 1,500 voters. Do we know if that has been done?
That has not, as of this date, as of the date that the committee met, it had not been done.
So if the SEC does not notify the General Assembly, the General Assembly still has the responsibility to act by April 1, is that correct?
That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
But they may or may not act, even though the precincts are greater than the 1,500 in
Correct.
size.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to accept the recommendation by the re-precincting committee with an amendment to it. And that amendment is that we do not wait until April 1st to see whether we have received a request from the legislative delegation to do this. Because I believe that we have the ability to act prior to getting notice from the legislators. If we are looking for compliance with the Code of Laws and the 1,500 voter per precinct count, I don't see anything that prohibits us from proceeding with a request to the legislative delegation. So again, I would like to make a motion that we accept the re-precincting committee's recommendation with an amendment that we proceed prior to April 1st with the request to split these precincts.
What's the motivating factor? I mean, April 1st is
Right around the corner.
next week.
Tuesday.
Well, I believe our intention is to implement the split precincts effective January 1st, 2026. So for reference, Act 82, which split 31 precincts and added 31 precincts to Beaufort County, the bill for that was initially filed on March 23rd, 2023, so prior to the April 1st date. And that bill was approved by the governor in late June. I don't remember the exact date. And I did have a discussion with the chairman of our legislative delegation, Mr. Kurzman, and he believes that we do have time during this session to file the local legislation and have it passed within this session. But the sooner we do that, the better. So I don't see a benefit of waiting until April 1st, and I also don't see any restrictions that prevent us from requesting the bill prior to April 1st.
I have a question. If we just adopted the report from the re-precincting committee, and the committee says that if the Beaufort County Board of Voter Registration and Elections does not receive notification, then by April 1st. So how can we adopt the recommendation of the committee and then turn around and say we're going to proceed before April 1st? That's just my interpretation. It seems to be a contradiction
I
there.
believe we adopted the report, but we're
Right.
now talking about a motion to split the
Okay.
precincts.
Okay. So I just really don't see the urgency to do it before the April 1st deadline. That's only a week away.
So I'm still puzzled, for the chair, as to the urgency and how that's going to be a benefit to us. I guess that's where my puzzlement is coming in. How is it going, if we submit today versus submitting Tuesday, why is that gonna make a difference in terms of whether the legislature is going to act on it or not? I guess I'm just a little puzzled. In your conversation with the legislature, did they say that they wanted something from us sooner rather than later? Is that the impression you received when you spoke to them?
Generally speaking, there were no specific dates discussed, except that we did discuss the Act 22 dates in
Right.
2023 as a reference.
So, do they need us to act? If they already have the information at their disposal, why don't they go ahead and act? Even if they don't get a prompt from us, they already have the information at their disposal. And if there's an urgency to act, why wouldn't they just go ahead and act? Why would they need some notification from us to act upon something that they're gonna eventually act upon anyway? I guess that's where I'm a little perplexed.
But I don't know that they will act upon it anyway, and perhaps a question for the director. In the past, have we received a notice from the legislative delegation on April 1st about precincts that are greater than 1,500 and should be split?
No, sir, we've never received notification from the delegation about any of the precincts that we split over the years. It usually comes from it's usually a recommendation coming from us and/or the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office.
Okay, thank you. So I believe in the world of limited resources, our legislative delegation is not really paying attention to this. So they are looking to us to make a recommendation. So my proposal is that no need to wait a week. So if we believe these 8 precincts need to be split, we go ahead and make the recommendation to them as soon as we can.
When you say to them, who specifically are you referencing?
The legislative delegation.
When we're making a recommendation to the body who already have the information and has a history of not responding, is this going to serve as an incentive for them to respond?
I would say there's a history of them responding to requests from the Board of Elections.
Okay.
So as Ms. Small said, in the past, the board has made recommendations to the legislative delegation, and they've taken action based on that.
And Mr. Chairman, in the recommendation to the delegation, would you make sure if, the board decide to do that, that funding is available for equipment to operate these facilities as well?
Yes, we'll certainly make that part of the request.
Thank you.
So let me make sure I understand. So the legislature is saying that if we make this request now for the split and the funds, that they will have time to submit that into the upcoming budget.
There was no assurance about that, and in my discussions, we did not talk about budget. So if the request to proceed with a bill to split these precincts is accompanied by a budget request, if that's the suggestion, then we will do that.
Okay.
So I'll restate the motion. So I make a motion that our Board of Elections recommend to the legislative delegation that they split these 8 precincts effective January 1st, 2026. And that our request to the delegation be made pursuant to a vote at this meeting rather than waiting until April 1st.
Can we include and amend this motion to say, request to split these precincts and provide funds for the additional equipment required to operate them? Can we combine those 2 things in one motion?
I thought that's what he said.
I didn't hear anything about funds.
I did not state that in my restated amendment or motion, but I can do that. I can restate the motion again.
Yeah.
Okay, so I make a motion, and after the motion, if somebody could second it before we have more discussion. So I'll make a motion that the Board of Elections make a recommendation to the legislative delegation to split the 8 precincts listed in this re-precincting meeting report, and that our request to the delegation include a request for funding to provide voting equipment for these additional precincts.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Sorry, did we get a count there? Let's put our hands up again in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor. 8 in favor. Okay. Unanimous. Okay. Any other comments from the re-precincting committee?
So,
No other comments other than, we may need additional staff. I know you mentioned equipment to operate the precincts, but we may need additional staff as well.
Okay, well, this would be in financial year 2026. Is that right? So, and that budget hasn't been finalized yet.
That is already submitted.
It's already submitted. Is it possible to amend the submittal if additional poll workers are needed? Not at this time.
Poll
Okay.
workers, and I think 2 additional, staff persons are necessary. Is that correct, Madam Director? Yes.
You talking about poll workers or
No, I'm talking about certified staff from your office.
what about them?
Are additional staff required if we split
No, ma'am.
these precincts?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no further comments on redistricting, we'll move on to rules.
Okay, the Rules Committee has met twice since our last board meeting, and we have completed a draft, thank you, Chris, for getting this to everybody, of a new operations manual. And I know there's some concerns about some of the items included in it, so that we possibly may need to vote on whether we feel that they should be included. One is appendix, I believe it's E, the Roberts Rules of Order. So if there's any discussion, I'd like to know the sense of the board about including Roberts Rules of Order in this operations manual. Does anyone have an opinion on that?
Liz, may I make a comment about that?
Yes.
Just, I mean, so the entire board knows, when we met, I believe it was unanimous that everyone on the Rules Committee made the recommendation or concurred with the recommendation to have Robert's rules listed, just for the record, if you will.
Okay, so you heard from Don that the entire members of the Rules Committee felt that this should be included. Do we have any discussion about that?
I didn't hear what he said. Can you restate your?
He said that when the Rules Committee met, the members of the committee were unanimous in their desire to include Robert's rules.
Okay.
So just for the record, we were unanimous in that. And I know that there are some people who don't feel it's appropriate, so if there's any discussion, I would feel comfortable if we had a motion to either accept or not accept putting Robert's rules in.
Ms. Johnson, can I just make a clarification?
Yes.
Am I correct that the Rules Committee is providing an interim report on their update to the rules at this point? In other words, the draft operations manual we received is an interim copy, and that
It
you're
is an
still
interim copy. There will be some changes made to it, both in the sense of some typographical errors and some suggested changes to it. I know that Mr. Ford and you made suggestions. I appreciate the input, and some of them, with Mr. Ford's, he caught a somewhat egregious typing mistake, basically completely changing the sense of that paragraph, dealing with the secretary. And he had 2 other questions that hopefully we can discuss at some other time. If you want to discuss them now, we can. And then Mr. Sweeney made multiple suggestions for changes.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that the committee is not putting this forward or not recommending that the
We're not
board
recommending
vote
that
to
we vote
accept
on
or
it this
not.
time. We are going to have to go back and meet again to deal with some of those suggestions that we received.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair? What was the reason for not wanting to include Robert's Rules of Order? I think I heard some discussion earlier about that. I just wanted to know for clarity.
So I'm the one that stated that objection. And the reason is, Robert's rules should be used as a guide to fill in the gaps of our house rules. And this operations manual is essentially our house rules.
Right.
And Robert's Rules really addresses the process of meetings and the voting process, and it's really great for maintaining order and fairness in the meetings, but it's let's call it a self-inflicted choice to use Robert's Rules, and we do. We use it to fill in the gaps here and help us run our process, but Robert's Rules is not required by South Carolina law. And Robert's Rules is subordinate to our house rules. So if we look at the order of precedence that our board works under, the most important is South Carolina law. The second is our house rules, which is this operations manual. And then Robert's Rules is a guide. It's not mandatory. And I believe that there are 3 problems with including Robert's Rules in our house rules. And first, let me say, I'm happy to have a reference in here to Robert's Rules. My objection is to including the text of some third party's condensed version of Robert's Rules. My objection is to putting this actual text in here. Happy to put a reference to Robert's Rules. But including this text, I think, has 3 problems. One, the Robert's Rules text that's here may conflict with our house rules. So I don't know if the Rules Committee looked through this text that somebody else condensed to determine if there are any conflicts with our house rules. I don't think that we want to insert a possible conflict. And I don't want us to be in compliance or non-compliance with the wrong thing. The second thing is that the operations manual describes the role of the board in carrying out elections in accordance with South Carolina laws. South Carolina Code of Laws provides no requirement for Robert's Rules. It's just a tool that we use. And we use that tool just like we use our knowledge of how to drive in the traffic rules to get to the polling locations and check on things. We all know how to fill out an expense form for mileage, but we don't put those instructions in here. And finally, it is a third-party document, and third-party documents are subject to change, and they're not in our control. So I believe it's always best when referencing third-party information to point to it in the House rules rather than repeating it. And in this case, we're repeating text that came from a third party. We don't know if it conflicts with our House rules or not, and therefore I don't think it should be in here.
Mr. Chair, if it does conflict, I think that needs to be a discussion by the Rules Committee. But my experience has been that Robert's Rules helps us not necessarily to reach consensus, but to have an operational procedure where each person is heard, discussions don't go on forever, and it's just an orderly way to conduct business. And I do think that county council uses Robert's Rules. I think we need to research that. But just to not have any protocol for reaching decisions and facilitating in a smooth manner as a collective body appointed by the governor, I think that may be a mistake not to have that as a reference, not as a guiding light necessarily.
So perhaps I didn't make myself clear. I completely agree with you. I agree that Robert's Rules should be used for the processes we follow and fill in gaps that are in the House rules. My only objection is to inserting some text drafted by a third party, their idea of a condensed version of Robert's Rules.
Well, they were appointed by you.
I think that
Excuse me.
in the House rules, we can say that we refer to Robert's Rules when necessary to conduct our meetings, to do votes, and to keep order. I agree with that. But if it's confusing to insert a third-party document inside our home document, house document.
It's
So
also,
when we say house rules, if I may,
Yes.
where where are those house rules written?
I use house rules as a generic description of our operations
Oh, okay.
manual. So most of the sections in the operations manual are drafted by the board.
Okay,
So I consider those to be the house rules.
okay.
I think they just complement and facilitate what the house rules suggest.
I totally agree with you. But my opinion is that the condensed version of Robert's Rule in this manual, it's a primer for people who may not be familiar with Robert's Rules. And I think it can be included in the orientation package that's given to new board members, rather than sitting in, we don't know if it conflicts or not, in our House Rules document.
And it's included as an appendix, not actually a part of the body of the House rules, which possibly answers your concern. I don't
No, an
know.
appendix is part of the House Rules.
So, do we have a motion? Are we going to?
So, I guess I'm looking for a compromise that satisfies what the Rules Committee members' objective was, as well as to not do anything that would be secondary to the House rules. So if we, going back to what you said, Matt, if it's still a guide along with the House rules. If we put language in the operations manual that refers to Robert's rules, does that satisfy the intent of the Rules Committee? To have Robert's rules used, if you will?
I think if we put them in, I think it kind of guides you, either use them or don't use them. I think it becomes too ambiguous when you have rules that are sitting there, and then we try to drift, and somebody says, well, Robert's rules are in the book. It kind of misguides, I think, the board, unless you make a flat decision, either to use it or don't use it, or just use it as a reference.
I'd like to make a motion then related to the inclusion in the Robert's rules, if I may. Based on the recommendation of the Rules Committee, I believe it would be appropriate for the board to either approve or not approve, if you will, the inclusion of Robert's rules in this preliminary operational manual that's submitted to the board for review. We either say yes or we say no as a board to include Robert's rules in the operational manual.
Okay, go. So would you restate the motion,
I'm
please?
not sure that I can.
This is still a draft document, correct?
Yes,
This is
Yes.
correct, but
it's
if,
a conceptual discussion.
Yes.
So,
if we're going
do we,
forward
do
and
we need a
having,
motion at this point if it's a draft document?
I think we do, because we're gonna go back and meet again, and when we bring a completed document to you, we don't wanna start taking apart piece by piece and say, take this out, take that out. And since I knew there was some, division of opinion on this, I thought we could get that settled now, then we include it in the final document, or if it's the, consensus of the board, we don't include it. But we won't have to have this discussion and start ripping a document apart that we're asking for approval of the whole document. There's 2 or 3 philosophical
Okay.
questions that I think we need to discuss, so we know how to go forward as we continue to edit this document.
Okay, just a point of clarification, Mr. Chair. If Robert Rules of Order is not a part of the document, what is the potential replacement to make sure that our meetings are operated in a smooth and acceptable fashion? What will be, because that's not in the manual. What would be the alternative to Robert Rules of Order?
Yeah, I guess I'm not making myself clear. I'm not looking for an alternative. We will follow Robert's rules where we don't have house rules that cover our conduct.
Right.
My only objection is inserting a third party's condensed
Okay.
version or cheat sheet of Robert's rules into our house rules. And when I read this, this appendix, it refers to a useful guide for neighborhood association chairs. So I don't know where this third-party document came from, but it doesn't seem appropriate for our Board of Elections.
Okay, but this is a draft document
Right.
that they are going to make changes. They're gonna make the suggested changes that we've already said to them, and we can include, we can make those changes to this document that make it pertain to us.
Right.
That's not difficult to do, even though it's a third-party document as an exemplar. I think the Rules Committee can take that document and make it apply to this board. I don't think that's difficult to do.
I mean, another option is possibly, giving every member of the board, when they come onto the board, a copy of the version of Robert's Rules that we wish to follow, and just reference that document, which would be probably purchasing, a Robert's Rules handbook.
But
Yeah,
they-
and as Gene says,
This is
the full Robert's
abbreviated.
Rules are,
Yeah,
more
it's
than an
this
inch
thick.
thick.
Yeah,
So
and I
that-
like the
that-
fact that it's abbreviated.
Yeah, we need a
and it's-
condensed
And it's
version. We
attached,
do
and
not
it's just
need the
relevant to
2-inch.
what we are doing as a board without having to go through a 300-page.
I mean, unless you're a
Document.
parliamentarian, Robert's Rules means nothing to any of us, really. I mean, the book is this thick.
Right,
I mean, it's, if you want to sit there and look up everything that we do,
right.
it's time consuming. I would just
So I
say,
think that the appendix is.
I would just make a motion to use it as a reference for board approval if we need to clarify something that we don't know how to clarify ourselves.
So my recommendation is that the Rules Committee put a reference to Robert's Rules in our House rules, rather than inserting a third-party condensed version of it. So as Ms. Johnson said, we provide during orientation our preferred condensed version of Robert's Rules to new board members, and that is referenced and used by the board going forward.
Is that the sense of the board? I mean, we need motions here.
I mean, alternately, I would request the Rules Committee to make an order of precedence statement in our House rules, so that if there's a conflict, we know which prevails. And also, if the board decides to put in a third party's condensed version of Robert's Rules, make sure that they vetted it and selected, and it's the one that they want, rather than the one that was just in the original version for neighborhood associations.
So at this point in time, I'm gonna make a motion that we include a condensed version of Robert Rules of Order in the operations manual.
I'll second that.
One second.
Can you clarify condensed version? What does that really mean?
What is a condensed version means? Something smaller than the 1-inch thick or 2-inch thick official version. So we're gonna pick either something, this one or something similar. And, when we meet as a rules committee, we'll pick one that we think is appropriate to our situation.
Okay, so.
Sounds confusing.
So it's been seconded, we're in discussion now, so,
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if this motion is approved, then I would request, number one, yes, that the Rules Committee selects the condensed version that they feel is the most appropriate. And number two, that there's a section in our House rule that describes the precedence of documents. Do you have further comments?
No further comments.
I just kind of think it's cleaner to reference Robert's Rules
Rather than
in a
include it.
document rather than trying to go through and find the most appropriate condensed version out there in the universe that could apply to us. If anybody wants this abbreviated version, they can just rip it off as this appendix, and that can be their personal cheat sheet.
Well, personally, I see that the appendix that you have included are fine with me. I mean, it's not that long. I just don't understand the objection to it. Just a few more pages.
Okay, so there was a motion and it was seconded, so we'll take a vote. So all in favor of the motion, raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4.
No? 1,
Five?
2, 3, 4, 5.
I'm just not gonna vote because I have
Okay,
no
so-
problems with what has been submitted.
4 in favor, all opposed? Okay, 3 opposed. Okay, the motion carries. So just to confirm, that means that the motion was to include a condensed version of Robert's rules selected by the Rules Committee and an order of precedence statement put into the House rules in the event of any conflicts.
Okay, another item that is going to be, we need to vote on before we actually publish the final copy is, I know that in the draft I put in of what you originally stated and our, Mr. Ford for facilities, and based on past practice, do we include in here a statement that the chair or his designee, which generally would mean vice chair, and we could actually say vice chair, should attend every committee meeting? And let me just say that if the chair or the vice chair, or at least the chair had been at the meeting, a lot of the concerns about this document could have been answered when we went through it. Literally, did we not read it line by line? We read it line by line. And so I looked at our standing committees, not looking at our, ad hoc committees. We have 5 of them. And if we appointed people to the chair, to the committees strategically, we could have the chair and the vice chair at every committee meeting just by appointing the vice chair to 3 and the chair to 2. But the question is, do we want to have a statement saying that the chair or his representative needs to be at every committee meeting?
When you say every committee meeting,
Every
you mean
committee.
subcommittees, the standing committees?
Yeah, I mean, when we have a facilities committee meeting, would the chair or the vice, his designee, which is usually the vice chair, attend? When we have a rules committee meeting, a re-precincting committee, would the chair or the vice chair attend? In the past, I believe that was the practice. I know that our current chair wants to change it, but I also know that if we're, as I said, strategic about how we make committee appointments, it doesn't really require attending more committees.
So is it a question of attending the committee meetings or being a member of the committee?
And again, that would be part of the discussion, being a part of the committee, and which means they are involved in the discussion and in the voting. And I'm not sure, and I may need some clarification, when you deal with a quorum, if the chair attends, does not vote, and does not speak, but just observes, then if we have 4 committee members plus the chair, does that violate the rules of a quorum?
Yes.
Okay, so what it would mean is that probably he or she would have to be a member of the committee.
Can I ask a
Still
question?
violating because you're over, you can't
Well,
have
as long as
5.
we have to have the right numbers, and right now, we have committees with 4 people, so
Right.
it requires some readjustment. But as I looked at it, the committees that we currently have, I believe between the chair and the vice chair, that they only covered maybe 3 committees. So in the process of reducing the number of members so that the chair or the vice chair could attend, we'd have to make some rearrangements anyway. And that, as I said, if we worked it so that the vice chair as the chair's designee was on 3 different committees, then if the chair's on 2 committees, we cover that requirement anyway.
Let me
That
ask
I
a
would put in,
question.
But, the question is, should they be on voting members of the committees, I guess, since they can't be observers.
How will this affect the autonomy of the committee and the independence in making decisions and presenting them at meetings like this, the
Well,
board? I'm just asking a
I'm gonna
question.
defer to Eileen, who was the chair before. Were you a member of all the committees when you were chair?
Ex officio,
You were a
Ex
voting
officio.
member of all the committees.
ex officio.
Ex officio.
Ex officio.
So you were ex officio, so basically what
But I was
that,
at the meetings.
you were at the meeting as an ex officio person. So that means that each committee would have 3 members, and then you attended as the ex officio, so
Yeah.
there'd be 3 voting members. So we have language in here relating to this. We need to know what we want as our procedure going forward. Because we either take it out totally, or the board comes to a consensus on the language.
So you're saying that instead of having 4 members, we should have 3 members?
With the chair or
With the
his
chair
designee
and-
as an ex officio member.
Right.
And there'd be 3 voting members of the committee.
Okay.
And as Eileen said, that's how it functioned while she was the chair. Going back further in time, I guess Jean was the chair before Eileen? So is that how it functioned when you were the chair?
Yes, and that's how it functioned before you did.
So there's historical precedence for that. The question is, do we want to go back to that method, or have 4 voting members, and unless the chair or the vice chair are actually one of those 4 members, no representation for them? And that's a philosophical issue that I don't think the Rules Committee should solve. It should be the sense of the whole board.
Can I ask what the purpose would be?
What's the benefit? Yeah, I have the same question.
On
Well,
4
I'm
versus
gonna
3?
give you a perfect
Well, having
example.
the chair or vice chair present at all the committee meetings.
As ex officio, what's the benefit?
I think you get the input of the chair, but it's also gonna save me from getting things like this. If the chair had been there and we went, while we were going through it line by line, and I think that the 4 members of the committee would agree, we pretty much read this line by line, that the chair would have had his input in at that time, and the amount of editing would be less, and it would save the chair all the time that it took him to read this to make his comments. On the finance committee, the same thing. I think sometimes the chair would probably want to have input on the budgeting process that we do. And as we stand now, I'm just looking at it, and currently, Mr. Sweeney is the chair of one committee, but Mr. Backer is on that same committee. So basically, we don't get their input on 2 committees, we get it on 1. And we have that kind of, if we're more strategic about where we place those 2 people, it really wouldn't be that big of a hardship, I think, for people to be part of every committee, one of the 2 of those individuals. I don't know, I just want
Why
to
have
sense-
committees? That's my question.
I just found it kind of unrealistic to sit in front of a monitor and read a document 1 page at a time and approve it without having the entire book in front of you to read the whole thing and go through it again. I mean, I didn't think there was a timeline that would be in a rush to put this together, and that it would take several meetings to be able to review it and to make the appropriate changes, because, I mean, we all know we sat there for 2 or 3 hours, and were blinded by, just making the changes. I found it extremely confusing myself. And then we had all the lines going through and the corrections and who made the corrections. It was basically, impossible until you get a semi-finished document in front of you and then go through it and say, oh, well, this doesn't look right, or.
So I think that's why we're calling this an interim draft, and we're discussing it. And on the one case you mentioned, Ms. Johnson, where the chairman made a lot of comments, I don't think those comments were relevant to his position as the chairman. That member of this board would have made those comments anyway.
But it would have been more efficient if they were made during the meeting. And what I'm saying is, I don't know which committees you're gonna plan to attend, and it's not my business in the sense which ones you want to attend, but I think we just need to decide whether we're going to adopt a new precedent or a new procedure, or go back to the historical precedent.
So my opinion is that we have 5 standing committees and 1 ad hoc. And we will probably have an ad hoc occasionally. We have the early
Right.
voting center ad hoc. So that's 6 committees. That's 24 committee spots. I think it's unreasonable for the chairman to take 6 of those 24 committee spots. Right, we have 6 committees times 4, that's 24 spots.
And
It's
the way-
unreasonable for a chairman or a vice chairman to take 6 of those 24 spots. I think to Ms. Dorr's point about some autonomy of committees, we should be selecting people for committees who have strengths for those committees, not necessarily the chairman or the vice chairman, because that's all personality-based anyway.
Well, to your point that we have 24 slots, I am currently on, I believe, 3 committees or 4 committees. Basically, you would still each only have 3 or 4 committees. They would just be strategically placed so that either the chair or the vice chair could attend. Instead of the chair and the vice chair being on the same committees.
I think we're gonna run the risk of a few people running the whole board if we start that. And I really believe in committee discussion and committee decision-making. And if we're gonna do that, for example, if the chair outlines what the committee agenda is, what outcome you should reach,
That's
then
not-
let me finish. What's the purpose of the committee? And I think we need to value the diversity and the opinions of the committees which the chair appointed. And we need to really think about what we're doing
So
here.
what you're saying is that you feel that the previous precedent is probably not the best way to go?
I didn't say any of that. I just said what I said. I didn't say any of that.
Okay.
And also, some of these committees may not even meet, but maybe once a year, or maybe not even at all. You know, like, for instance, re-presenting, I'm looking at this as redistricting, but re-presenting, how often will that committee be meeting? Okay, facilities, well, matter of fact, once we get this manual and everything put down for rules, it seemed like we'll just, the budget and finance, legislative affairs, I mean, you see where I'm going? So we are beating this to death without thinking that you're not gonna be having a lot of meetings.
So
You see what I'm saying?
are you saying that you would like to stay with the historic precedent and ask that the chairman attend the committee meetings?
Yes, chairman or the vice chair, because there's not that many meetings that is going to be held. I just gave an example of re-presenting.
So what you're saying
Yeah.
is there's a division on the board as far as what you want to put in the manual, which would be our operating procedures. So we probably need a vote for one way or the other and see what the consensus of this board is.
I'm trying to get some clarity on what the committees are looking for. Each committee has a charter.
It does.
The chair has identified some projects for each committee, so that the committees have projects to go and work on. So I'm not sure what having attendance at meetings, and I'm not sure what you were getting at with autonomy of the committee. The committee, in my mind, should be working on activities and or projects at the direction of the board, and then coming back to the board with their input.
So you I mean, I'm getting a feel for what different people believe, but we need a statement so that we can put it in here that reflects the consensus of the board about whether we're going to have 4 members and whether the chair or the vice chair lands there is totally random or based on the chair's decision on who works best in what position, or that we are going to have committees of 3 people with the 4th person being either the chair or the vice chair. Those are the 2 ways we can go, and it's up to the consensus of the board which way we go. But we need some guidance, because if we put it in here that it's going to be this way, that's, may not be the sense about how the board wants us to do. So as a committee, we need some guidance from the board as a whole.
I have a question. Is it protocol that when a committee submits their recommendation, does the entire board get a copy of that, obviously before it's voted on? Or,
It is protocol. I mean, since I've been on the board, my committee report was included in the report that Chris submitted to all of you.
So I don't believe that's in the House rules, but it probably should be. If a committee is making a recommendation to the board to vote on something,
It should
that
be in writing.
recommendation should be distributed X number of days before the board meeting. So I think that's a good addition. Yeah,
I would think so before you voted on it, if you'd want to read it
you
and
have time to read it.
have
Yeah,
time to
that's right.
digest what it is you're voting on.
So be part of the board packet, so to speak.
Yeah. I
But
mean, I wouldn't-
distributed X days before the board meeting. So, in my opinion, we should not be bound by the way this Board of Elections has done things in the past. If they make sense, we should follow them. If they don't make sense, then we shouldn't be bound by them. I think the benefit of having the chairperson on every committee ex officio is that the chairman can then see across all the committees about what the discussions are and perhaps bridge some discussion or direction in those committees. On the flip side of that, the chairman may not always be the best person to contribute to a given committee based on their skills. And as Ms. Dorr mentioned, in some cases, there's need for full independence of a committee for a project.
I agree.
So my suggestion is that the rules be amended to say that the 4th member of every committee shall be the chairman, except that the chairman may have the option to appoint another board member to take that 4th seat. So the ad hoc committee, EVC, Early Voting Center, is a good example of that. I was previously on that committee, but because there's other things that I need to be working on, Mr. Sawicki has the experience in analysis and business management, so I appointed him to take that 4th seat on the EVC. I believe that if there's 4 committee members and 1 committee member cannot attend a meeting, the chairman could be given the option to attend as an observer in that committee, but not as a voting member.
Okay, so is that a motion or just an observation? Because,
I'll make it a motion, so.
So I make sure I understand now. I realize it's a draft document, but you said, Liz, are you saying that in the document you have 4 members to each standing committee, and you think it should go to be 3?
plus either.
Plus either the chair or the vice chair?
Or his designee, who would normally be the vice chair.
Okay.
And we could make it explicit that it's the vice chair.
So I would agree with that, except the stipulation of the vice chair. Should be an appointment of the chairman.
So,
So, and for precedence, so I looked at the county council in Beaufort County. There are 4 committees, and the chairwoman is ex officio on each of those 4 committees.
I agree with that.
That's 4 versus our 6. I looked at Hilton Head Town Council. They have 3 committees, and the mayor is not ex officio on any of those committees. So I don't know what other boards of election do, so I can't really say whether what our board's been doing historically is typical or not. But in reviewing these rules, I see more upside of a slight change to what we've been doing than just continuing on with it, because that's what we've always done. So if I
Okay.
maybe clarify a motion. A motion is that conceptually, the rules be revised to say that each standing committee shall have 3 board members as members, plus the chairman, except that the chairman may appoint another board member to take that role, take that seat.
Okay.
Very good. You will probably have to remove one of the members from the re-precincting committee, because right now we have 4.
All the committee have 4.
Hmm?
All have 4.
Okay, but I'm just saying, before we
Well-
meet again,
I mean, when Mr. Sweeney appointed members, he pointed 4 to several of the committees. And if I understand this motion correctly, is choosing not to participate, one of those members is the person that was appointed in his stead. Is that correct? So-
That's correct. The default is that the chairman is the 4th member of every committee, except that the chairman has the discretion to appoint another board member to take his or her place on a standing committee.
I was just saying, my committee had 4, and your vice chair is not representing you because he was a voting member of my committee. So,
He's a regular committee member,
okay, so,
irrespective of the vice chair.
right, but I'm saying that she's saying that only 3 members of a committee, and then the 4th member would be either the chair or someone that the chair appointed.
Yes.
So,
That's the
That's-
motion I've made for a change to our house rules, to the
Okay.
operations manual.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's a unanimous conceptual change.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think that's the extent of the things that require a consensus from the board so that the rules don't violate the board's intent. I think we're good now. So, thank you for your time.
Okay, and also, Ms. Johnson, there are a few charters still missing.
The only complete
And I-
charters we have are finance and rules.
Mhm.
And I know that at his meeting tomorrow, Mr. Ford intends to work on the charter.
We
You
will.
had sent out an email to members, and I included that as a draft, because
Right.
my thought was this was the beginnings of your deliberations. We have received nothing from either legislative affairs or re-precincting.
The original due date, based on the committee projects, was April 10th. Is that still a good date, or would you like those charters before
That would
then?
be a good date.
Okay,
The facilities committee mission will be completed tomorrow. I just need my committee members to vote on it and reach consensus, then we can pass it on to you immediately.
Can I just bring up one thing to help you, because I know it's a nightmare. Would it help if any of these suggestions that we make to change, submit the entire paragraph, not just where the changes are?
It would definitely help.
Okay.
The page number, because the pages are numbered, and if, someone wants to submit a suggestion for a change, I know the page number, it makes it easier to find. And yes, the paragraph additionally makes it easier in order to make changes based on the board's recommendations.
So submit the whole paragraph
And
with the change. with the
I
change.
should point out that I will not be at the April meeting. And so unless one of my other board members wants to present our deliberations and our final, what we hope will be our final draft, it may have to wait until May. I mean, I'll go either way. If someone else wants to present it, otherwise it'll be May. But could we say, if you could read this and have all your proposed changes in by April 10th, then hopefully our committee can meet before I leave on the 18th for my month-long
Great.
absence.
Yeah, I would request that the committee members comply with that and that you appoint somebody on the committee to present.
Mr. Ford, he said, come on, but that's okay.
I'll make that happen sooner, but I'm not gonna do
Okay,
it.
moving on the agenda, next is committee report from the Early Voting Center Evaluation
Okay,
Committee.
we had our first meeting this afternoon, just before our regular board meeting. We discussed the scope of the project and where we were geared, what our goals and objectives were in the process. Right now, we're in the process of gathering additional data, and we can begin setting some goals and objectives.
Okay,
Go through our 4 categories that we typically go through. Legislative updates, election facility, and any miscellaneous things that may be out there. The only bill that I saw since the last monthly board meeting was the House Bill 4140 that was introduced on the 5th, on the 5th of this month. And I'm not sure if it's going to go anywhere. None of them have been doing anything since the last time we met. So this was introduced by Representative Newton, and it's relating to early voting. And what I understand it to be, because it was one of those things that were discussed at SCARE, was they were proposing changing the early voting hours and time for primaries. Instead of it being 5 days, closing at 5, they are proposing 6 days, closing at 6. So that's what's out there right now.
Excuse me.
The House met 2 weeks ago to talk about their budget, and these are the changes that were being recommended in the House budget for election projects. It was an $11 million one-time money for statewide voting equipment upgrades, $4 million for reoccurring money for annual election cost. And these are being proposed in the House budget. This is not the Senate. The House is also recommending upgrades, actually no upgrade to these provisos, 102.1, and they did not recommend, y'all know we talked about at one point, there was a bill being introduced to increase the stipend for board members. Well, that was not in the budget, in the House version at least, and also increase in poll workers' pay from $75 a day to work on election day to $100 a day. And that was not improved, nor was the $60 for training that's being offered now going to $75. None of this was in the House budget.
Can you provide me any kind of data as to why there isn't, there's not any support to, proposed change for the poll worker pay increase?
No, sir, I cannot.
Is this something that, I feel very strongly about this. I think the rest of us feel very strongly about this. Is there something that we can do to talk to our delegation regarding this, in your opinion?
I can certainly raise the question, yes.
These are things that we were championing in SCARE, the increase for board members and increase for poll workers especially. But remember, you have to work with our delegation and our legislators and This is not just Beaufort County delegation. This is all of the representatives in the House. When they brought the budget forward, these things were not in it. So yes, your delegation members can have an impact, but it has already left the House. It's now going to be discussed in the Senate. The Senate can make changes to whatever the House is recommending, and then it would have.
During the length of time that we ask our poll workers to show up to work for an entire day, $100 per day is not asking a lot. So, I'm very disappointed in that.
I think the entire election community agrees with you, except we don't make the laws. So the lawmakers are going to be the people that will make the difference.
And Ms. Smalls, can I just confirm, County Council approved Beaufort County poll workers to get an additional $100 a day?
Yes, sir.
And that is not impacted at all by?
No, sir.
By this proviso?
No,
So whatever additional pay they get through the proviso, it will be on top of the $100 that Beaufort County's approved?
That's correct.
Is Beaufort County permanent, or is that just for the last election?
We can say that we have requested it in the '26 budget.
So we don't know yet.
No, sir, we don't know yet. But we feel good that it's probably going to go through. But again, we don't know. The next thing is poll workers training. We've been conducting new poll workers training, and I think it's been very successful. Our advertisements gone all over the county in different venues. We have had two sessions already. On March the 12th, we had 23 people attending, and on March 22nd, this past Saturday, we had 16. So right now, we've got 39 new poll workers that we can add to our database. And I want to thank Jean and Wendell for what they do when it comes down to recruiting and training these poll workers. And if you look at the next slide, this is telling you exactly of those the 39 poll workers that were trained, what area that they live in. So some of them are not very good. Miss St. Helena, Mr. Ford, you only had one that showed up so far, but you know, this is just the first month, so we've got several more training sessions.
That one signifies St. Helena.
Is good to go.
Is number one.
Yeah. Oh, that's what that is. Yes, okay. Whatever makes you feel better. All right. One of the projects we've been working on in the last month has been polling place surveys. We had 3 teams from the office go out across the area surveying our polling places to make sure that they are complying with ADA and, you know, outlets and whatever else we need to run our elections. And so far, there's been a correction to the report because we conducted 2 surveys on yesterday. So for the Hilton Head to Fusky area, instead of 20, on your report, you will show 21. There are really 23 that's been completed. And so we have a 96 completion. There's only 3 polling locations that still need to be surveyed. So I would like to thank the staff for being diligent, going out, conducting these surveys, and doing it in a timely manner.
That's great. That's a huge effort, Ms. Smalls. That's a lot of polling places. Can I ask you how well are we doing in the surveys?
They all good. Well, I shouldn't say all good. We still have the Bluffton Recreation Center. There's some concerns about one of the doorway not being complying, but there is a second doorway that is complying. So if we need to, we could switch over to using the second doorway. So, but other than that, I didn't see anything, did you, Wendell? I think everything was fine.
Good to hear, thank you.
Capital improvements. We've had our CIP project managers to come over and survey our office for some security equipment. And I don't like to really talk in detail about projects concerning security in an open forum, but they have come over and surveyed the office, and they will be making some security changes to our building. And I will give that to you all in writing so you can have what those changes are, but I do not want to discuss it right now, okay? I can discuss, so far as facility is concerned, the interior of the building. They will be replacing 5 of our doors inside. The wooden doors will be changed out to steel doors. And some of the projects that we requested, and the doors were one of them in fiscal year 26, which is coming up, is being done now. The doors is one of them. So they do have the monies on hand now to replace those doors, so that's good. And so some of the other projects for 26, the windows and all of that will probably be, if it's not finished by this fiscal year, it will be done in the next fiscal year budget cycle. And I will give you all a written report from them for your information. The generator, I have not gotten any updates on where we are with the generator. Hopefully by the next board meeting, we will have a little bit more information on that. This is miscellaneous stuff, just for your information, and you are invited if you would like to come. There will be an end-of-life planning seminar at our voter registration training room on April the 14th from 10 to 12. It will be conducted by one of our former board members, who is now the director of the Veterans Affairs Administration here in Beaufort. And she will be providing staff with some information on life planning, end-of-life planning. So, also, we had defensive driving classes for staff. 6 of our staff members attended on the 13th of March, and that was conducted by our risk management department. So all of our staff should know how to drive county vehicles without getting into any incidents. All right, I think Chris told me that all of you have completed your statement of economic interest, so we should be good to go because the deadline is March the 30th. And just a note for you all, council chambers will not be available to us in April because of renovations. And I am recommending that we use our office for board meetings until the renovation projects is complete.
Sounds good to me.
And congratulations to Mr. Mike Sawicki. He is officially a certified board member for Beaufort County Board of Voter Registration and Elections. He did it in record number time.
That's got to be the
So y'all, let's
quickest.
give Mike a hand.
Hey, Chris. Chris deserves a round of applause.
And after the next meeting, we should have another certified board member, I believe. All right. So thank you all for your patience. And are there any questions?
Madam Director, question, looking at the calendar, and board meeting dates, for 2025, November 26th is Thanksgiving week. Is there any review to change that date or combine it with the December meeting?
That will be up to the board. I'm sure the board will make a recommendation on what you want to do. Typically, that's done when we get closer to that date, but you all can make that change right now if you want to change the calendar.
We got to get some plane tickets.
Now, we do have an election
Yeah, what's the,
In November.
in
November.
November,
what's the date?
and you will be responsible for certifying one of those elections. We have 2 elections.
We got it.
So the date for that election,
Is the 4th,
November 4th,
and the certification is,
the 6th?
the 6th.
And if there were a runoff, when,
That one is not a
there
runoff.
won't be a runoff.
No, won't be a runoff. But the other one that is a potential runoff, they have their own commission, so they will certify their own election results. And if there's a runoff, they will also certify those results as well.
so no Thanksgiving plans until after the 6th.
So if the chair wants to make a recommendation to change that meeting or suspend that meeting, that's y'all.
Okay.
Mr. Ford had a question as well.
I had a question, but not necessarily directed to you, but in regards to, Brother Chair and Brother Vice Chair, you all had a meeting with Mr. Moore regarding this generator. Did you all get any report that you can share?
We had no immediate feedback from Mr. Moore at that time. So, okay, on the board meeting issue, I'll send an email to everybody to canvass their availability in late November, early December, and then we'll decide at the next board meeting.
Is that good enough?
Okay, any other questions for the director? Okay, next on the agenda is an executive session to discuss a personnel issue, and there will be no votes taken during this meeting or this session. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
I move that we move into executive session at this time.
Seconded by Ms. Johnson. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
The general board meeting is back in session. We were in executive session where no votes were taken. The next item on the agenda is announcements. As Ms. Small mentioned, ethics forms are due March 30th. The next board meeting is scheduled for April 23rd, 2 o'clock, and that will be at the Board of Elections office at 15 John Galt. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.